Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So, getting back to this issue of parenting and the proper role of parents, here you have a woman who is driving around, and this happened in Memphis, Tennessee, but we've seen this in other parts of the world as well, where you had a woman driving around, doesn't have enough room for her kids. So what does she do? She puts her kids in the back seat of an Explorer, but there's no room back there, so she puts them in kennels. Kennels for cats, kennels for dogs, kennels for just everything else. Now the police cite her, they arrest her, they charge her, and she's out on a $100 bond. And you think to yourself, where is the common sense? And of course, tragically, we're going to get used to, unfortunately, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, where we have an issue involving leaving a child in a car, right? I can't think of a more horrible way to disrespect the incredible gift of children. And we've lost, what was it? We lost a child last year, a little baby, I believe in Caldwell, that you had a guy who left that beautiful child in a car as he was, test driving cars or something like that? Remember that story? And he pled out or what have you. And those people that know, sometimes kids can be a hassle, kids can be this, but you don't never want to take somebody's kids, but if someone is going to put somebody in a kennel and they're not going in there voluntarily, you kids get in this kennel, and it's 95 degrees, and by the way, this happened in Memphis, Tennessee. It's humidity is very tough. 95 degrees, no vents in the back. You're pretty much in the sweat box. And what happens, God forbid, if somebody forgot? So you come down to this. When it comes to children, is it one strike and you're out? Is it one strike, you do something, you leave a kid in the hot car, you do this, you do that, you're done. Right? I mean, how in the world can you justify giving somebody a child if they don't respect, they don't honor, they don't protect that life? Something to think about this morning in our non-political world that we live in. Can you believe that? She drove the 8-year-old and the 7-year-old basically around town. She checked on them periodically, later removed them from the kennel and put them in the rear seats of the vehicle. I'm just amazed by this, that someone would lack the common sense. Now, maybe you've been to, games involving kids and stuff. And the kids are doing their own thing, having a great time. But there's always that one parent, that one bad parent. And we always talk about the power of the state, and no state should ever have the power to take away people's kids. But if you're putting them in the back of a kennel, and I've said this the other day, you know me, and if you don't, I have an issue with people. It scares the heck out of me. Call me a sissy, call me whatever you want, where we have beautiful dogs in the back of pickup trucks again. I don't see a need for it. People can say go to farmersonly.com and that'll explain the whole thing to you, Kevin Miller. I don't agree with it. I don't think it should be right. And I saw kids in the back of pickup trucks. Now, I believe there's a law against that, but now you've got people with their kids in the back of pickup trucks. You've got dogs in the back of pickup trucks going on the highway. We're talking about 84, where the speed limit can get up to 80 miles an hour. You ever stop fast? You ever do something without your seatbelt? You're going flying. Imagine being in the back of a truck. And I get that we live in the world involving Twitter and Facebook and phones and social media, but that should not replace common sense. And if you put your kid in a dog kennel, if you put your kid in the back of a pickup truck, then there should be big repercussions. And in my opinion, again, most people disagree with me on this. Pets in the back of vehicles, unsecured or even secured. It's hot. Things can happen. You talk to any area vet, and they'll tell you they treat animals all the time with broken legs and even worse because of something that could have been avoided. I hate to start the hour with a downer on that, but, really that's it. We're waiting for Frank King, the liberal comedian, and we love Big Frank, to talk about suicide. And how do you really talk about that? Well, you get a guest on like Frank, and he will talk about his story. He'll talk about, what you can do to prevent it. And, I sit back and think about this and look at the idea of what you can do to save a life. And this idea of suicide prevention. Now, we're going to give out the phone numbers for the suicide prevention hotlines. And by the way, you can go to KIDO Talk Radio, How to Save a Life, and there are ways you can do it, and I'd love to talk to you about it. Really, doesn't it come down to the idea of not being loved? The idea of no self-worth? And again, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, suicide rates rose 49 out of 50 states. You've got Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade, and yes, celebrity deaths. And people say, why does suicide only seem to matter when it is involving celebrities? I would agree with that. We lose people all the time. By the way, the national suicide prevention number is 800-273-TALK. 800-273-TALK. Or you can text HELLO to 208-398-4357. Or you can go to this website, Be the One 2. That's Be the One 2. All those details available at KIDOTalkRadio.com. When you're talking about firearms, when you're talking about mental illness, and we talk. But when it comes to saving lives, and whether we live in the West, whether we live in the East, whether we're listening on the KIDO Talk Radio app, it really comes down to, showing people that you care. For years in the state of Idaho, we didn't even have the national suicide hotline. We didn't even have a local hotline. Now we have volunteers. I couldn't imagine the training that is involved in that. I couldn't imagine the idea of answering those phones, dealing with people, knowing that your life is there to hopefully save someone else's. And when you're thinking about losing someone, and maybe that's a little bit too much of a touchy subject today. And, hopefully we'll get Frank on. Coming up this hour, we will go to Singapore. We will speak with John Decker. That's right. John Decker is in Singapore, Fox News Radio. And we're very proud to have Mr. Decker on, the only station in the Treasure Valley with a reporter live in Singapore. And we have John on all the time. We will speak with him and get his thoughts on what's going down in Singapore. Now, it's overnight there right now. The big meeting should happen while we're all asleep. We'll be discussing it throughout the week right here at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, 580 AM, 107.5 FM. So we've got the kids in the kennel. We also have a crazy move by the International House of Pancakes. Have you heard about this? IHOP. That's right. IHOP is changing its name. Remember New Coke? You remember New Coke? People thought that New Coke was the big thing to do, and let's make sure that we change Coke because Coke just wasn't relatable anymore.
First of all, good morning, and thanks for having me on the show. And I'd love to welcome all of America to the world's first IHOB restaurant, which stands for the International House of Burgers.
Burgers!
Really?
We're
Burgers?
making breakfast, brunch.
Wow, burgers. Wait a minute. Really?
So why are you doing this? Oh, the burgers are
These are the burgers right here?
Burgers.
That was fast.
Yeah, Darren, why are you doing this? Are we still going to have pancakes on the menu?
Okay, yeah, well, let me put to rest that concern. We're always going to have pancakes on the menu.
Okay.
We're always going to be IHOP, but America loves burgers and America loves IHOP, and we thought this was a fantastic combination to bring America's burgers to an iconic brand like IHOP. And you can see we have the whole one.
No, we can't see. That's from Fox and Friends earlier. This will go the way of New Coke. Trust me. Doug in Mountain Home with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Not bad, and you?
Yeah. No, I'm going to work like normal. I wish I'd win the lottery, but you got to buy tickets, and I don't buy tickets. So anyway, about suicide, Kevin, you hit the nail right on the head. It's called not having love in your life. and Christ wants to love you. And basically, they've thrown, just like what they're talking about with the actors, whatever you want to call entertainment part of it, they throw God completely out. Well, when they don't have God in their life, who do you think comes into their life? He's there to kill, steal, and destroy. He's called Satan. And that little voice, he's sitting right on their shoulder, Don't listen to that little voice that has something, something destructive to say, because God, anything pure of light is from God, love. I'm finding this out. The older you get, the more I wish I'd have followed him all my life. But he says, don't look behind, look ahead, But he's never going to do nothing to harm you. He's never going to forsake you or leave you. There's lots of times when my wife divorced me, there's lots of times in my life that I felt left, but he's right there through our troubles and our times. Listen, read his word and listen to it. We need God in our country. I mean, just read history. I look at Israel, how they'd leave him and and then come back and leave him and come back. And there was times in their lives, clear back in the Old Testament, Kevin, that for 400 years, when they followed him, they had no sickness, no disease. They had wealth. The whole world, was afraid of them because they had God with them. Well, look where we're at. I feel sorry for especially the kids. I feel sorry for anybody that commits suicide. You're just taking Satan's. He just won. You know what I mean? Oh, anyway, hope I'm not beating on anybody. I'm not trying to. I'm just saying, not try God, trust him, because he is there for you. That's all I have to say this morning, Kevin. Bye.
Bye-bye, Doug. God bless. Liberal Steve joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio.
Yeah, that's all you need. That's all you need in America is God, guns, and rock and roll, and you'll be as humane and normal as everybody. Come on. Depression, suicide, there's a lot of different reasons people commit suicide. Not just depression. Some are broke. Some jump from buildings because they lost their entire bank account. Happened just a while back in 2008. Happened in the 30s. The suicide is a dangerous place to go. It's a dark door. You step into it. Sometimes you can't step back. It's all in the mind. And why it's up in America, I don't know. You don't know. Everybody thinks they know, but they don't know. And as far as Grandma putting the kids in a dog cage, I did watch that little tidbit on Fox News this morning on my phone. At least Grandma could have used bigger cages. I mean, that little girl looked like she was really jammed in there. But
you're not being funny. You're just.
Oh, I'm not trying to be funny, Mr. Miller.
You're not outraged by that. You're not outraged by that.
No, they're in a car. They're safe. God, we never wore seatbelts when I was a kid.
You're saying it's okay to put those kids in a kennel.
Absolutely, they're safe. My dad never put us in a kennel, but we never wore seatbelts, and he had a bear in each hand and when he was driving. So, by God, it's just luck of the draw, I guess, isn't it?
Luck of the draw.
It was Grandma. Grandma's going to court. They'll go back to Ma and Pa, hopefully, if they got one. I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying is just saying.
I don't really know. I don't really know what you're saying. You've talked a lot, but really haven't said anything.
Okay, fine. I'll go back to finish my movie that Stormy Daniels was in. You stay.
Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, and phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So we have Liberal Steve making his usual goofy statements. But when you're driving around and you see something, do you say something? We talk about terrorism, but what about taking care of children. Plus, how to prevent suicide. Maybe that has happened to you as far as you've seen someone and you've said something, you made a difference. You know, on this program, we don't have a problem talking about God. We don't have a problem talking about family and freedom and faith and what it means to us. But the idea of saving someone's life, whether they're on a bridge in Twin Falls or you're Anthony Bourdain or you're Kate Spade or any of those people that do that. And you must, I suppose, try to put yourself in that person's situation. And maybe you are in that certain situation. That situation where we're looking at life and death and that feeling of loneliness, that feeling of abandonment, and just saying one thing to one person could make a difference. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller with you here. That's one issue. Coming up next, we could talk a little bit about the summit, but there's something else. I'll share it with you next. First, traffic and weather together, 25 after the hour. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. And let's go to Jim in Middleton with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Jim.
Morning, Kevin. That was awfully fast.
We aim to please.
Well, thank you, sir. Anyway, and thank you for shutting off that. I didn't even want to say it on the radio. The fellow that calls up that takes up valuable time and says nothing and adds nothing to your show. But it just shows how open-minded you are to let everybody call and what have you. And that's the difference between the left and the right. Anyhow, Kevin, a few notes on your subject. Depression, suicide, and so forth. What a lot of people don't understand is how valuable depression and pain and suffering is. And some people say, well, what's this guy talking about? When you go through these periods in your life, this is where you are going to grow the most. This is where you get out of your comfort zone, you start making changes, and it's hard to understand that, and trying to explain to people what they can do with that pain and suffering after the pain goes away, and how to use this to make you stronger and to learn how to cope with this. Anyway, I wanted to share that. I had a few little issues. When I was a youngster, in my early 20s and what have you, I never contemplated suicide, but I was pretty unhappy and depressed. But I used that to turn around in a positive way, and I've used that all my life to strengthen me in every way, financially, physically, mentally, in relationships and so forth. So if getting that message out to folks and learning to cope with that and turning it around to make you grow, I'm not going to say welcome pain and suffering, but when it does come, just say to yourself, hey, I'm going to learn from this and make me a better person.
Well, you know, and the experts, like you said, Jim, they always talk about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, but how many people do that these days?
Well, Kevin, you're right. And the society we have today, instant gratification and so forth. And you know, in my day, and especially my parents and grandparents, you know, there was a lot of suffering and there was a lot of giving up comforts today for something greater tomorrow. The early immigrants that came over that worked so hard to make a better family life for their families. And then in a couple of generations, it's gone to completely the other side where these kids, they don't want to work and put down roots and have relationships. They don't want to buy property. They don't want to have children. I see with a lot of these youngsters, no commitments, nothing. And Kevin, when you go the extra mile in your life, which you do, that's where life begins. That's when you really start to live and feel alive and what have you, rather than just surviving. Hopefully we'll bring these messages back. And folks like yourself, and you do it all the time, you're not afraid to speak your mind, the conservative message, you know, where so many people make fun of folks like us. But anyway, it's very important. Good things come to those who wait. I'm sure you've heard that before.
Exactly. And that's a great lesson that all of us should learn. Jim, we appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet, Kevin. Have a great day, and I'll talk with you later.
All right. Take care. Thank you for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Coming up next, we go to Singapore. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Have any of you ever been to Little Bighorn? You know, George Armstrong Custer. My dad always talks about going to Little Bighorn. I always say, you know, we need to go. That's one thing, that's one place that I've always wanted to see, and maybe as I get older, go back to Gettysburg and such. But believe it or not, you can buy a piece of Little Bighorn, including a piece of George Armstrong Custer.
George Armstrong Custer, the flashy, flamboyant U.S. cavalry officer, is best known for his catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876. He was also noted for his long, flowing blonde hair. A lock of that hair, believed to have been snipped off and sent to his wife Libby during the Civil War, has been in the possession of filmmaker Glenn Swanson. Now retired, the 78-year-old Swanson's been collecting Custer memorabilia for 40 years. Much of it went up for auction Saturday. Heritage Auctions in Dallas put a pre-auction estimate of $2,000 on the historic hair. It ended up selling for more than 6 times that amount, $12,500. Karen McHugh, Fox News.
Plus a lot of other Western items up for sale. We will have more on that coming up. Let's go to R&R. Good morning, R&R. You're on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller.
Hey, Millie Melissa. Hey, I highly recommend Custer. I was there with 3 of my kids, and there's phenomenal representation now of the Crow and the indigenous people. And not a fan of Custer. Not Tatal, being a bit of a Shoshone and a Scot. My basic addition this morning is there really is an overuse of the word they and an underuse of the word commie, pinko, liberal. Now, I know a pinko liberal that shows his mouth up once in a while named Steve, and he just gave me a diagnosis information. I'll guarantee you anybody that advocates for putting children in a cage and watches porn and laughs with that maniacal laughter, he's probably a NAMBLA. In my professional opinion, and 30 years working with 20 with kids that tried to suicide themselves, enough said about that. Lastly, Singapore today. This is a monumental day of incredible moment. Honored, Kevin. Peace out.
All right, R&R. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Getting ready to go to Singapore. John Decker will join us live from Singapore. We will get his thoughts on what's going on. Of course, the summit is a big deal, and we think about this, and you take a look at the media expectation game, and here's CNN.
Russia membership. You mentioned this a bit earlier. The president's style, though, is also what rubs a lot of these other leaders the wrong way. They all have domestic political audiences, too. They can't snap their fingers and make their legislatures, their parliaments, do what they want. The club is built on consensus. If you want to let Russia back in, you bring that up in the private meeting and you test everybody out. You don't announce it on the South Lawn. If the host is giving a speech on women's empowerment, you show up on time. You don't walk into the middle of the meeting disrupting everything. That's what angers them. They think, frankly, a lot of, if you read my emails yesterday, they think he's a jerk. Yeah. But just one last point here. I want to show you the cover of Time this week. the President of the United States in his King Me moment, he thinks he's right. He thinks he's right. We're watching the American delegation here arrive in Singapore. We're going to keep track of this. The plane is on the ground. There are a couple of planes with the American delegation. When the President pulls up to the tarmac and D planes, we will certainly talk about that. If I could have the time cover, I just want to show it to our viewers as the plane tarmacs here. This is the President's mindset, is the King Me moment. Is he, look, as he frequently says, I'm president, you're not. Yeah. He thinks he's right.
Right. Well, he has no grounding in American civic life. Okay. I mean, I think before he came to the presidency, his entire connection to American politics was through the prism of donors coming to his office to ask him for money. He didn't understand. I mean, he wouldn't have known
that would be to be a donor, not donors coming to his office. So the president could get peace with North Korea, and they would still find something wrong with him. Let's go to Hank in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Hank.
Good morning. I think the Little Bighorn is an instance where if you don't know the exact position of your enemy or the strength or size of your enemy, you don't go attacking in the situation. He back in the time of the Battle of Washita in 1868, Major Elliott, who was part of Custer's command there, was surrounded and cut off. This time it was Custer himself. Custer had a tendency to be reckless with a lot of his men. That was why he was resented, and particularly
a lot of people didn't like Custer.
Well, he was one of those people who didn't believe in following the rules himself, but he imposed strict discipline.
Isn't that the way it is? The hypocrisy, not just with Custer, but with all of us. Do as I say, not as I do.
Yes, in Custer's case, there was and like when he went on the expedition to Texas just shortly after the end of the Civil War, he basically provided very severe discipline for infractions, but yet he was resented because he would bring his wife Lydia along, and then these travels to Custer, And when at the time of the Kansas campaign in 1867 under Hancock. He and his wife got into a spat. He left his command and rode all the way back to Fort Hay, or several miles back to Fort Riley, because he and left his command out in the field because he was trying to get reconciled with his wife. I mean, he was very much, in a sense, he was very much a boy in a lot of ways. And then too, the problem with the command was that there was drinking. The post-war army, a lot of the officers, the boredom, and then it was sort of like terror, maybe a few minutes of action or terror, maybe a few years, and then just plain boredom. And so their personal lives are bad. Marcus Reno, during the battle, who commanded the skirmishers in the forest, and of course he later was chased up the butte. And I was at the Little Bighorn. I've seen that battlefield. I walked it over, and the rifle pits that Reno dug up the top of the ridge there are still there. You can still see but he was drunk on his ass. He'd been gone through 6 gallons of whiskey from Sutlers. He was buying it from Sutlers. And at the time of the battle, his judgment was completely muddled because I could not, and it was hot. It was June 25th, 1876. To sit there and when you're drinking whiskey at that kind of rate, which Marino, you get dehydrated. I could not imagine anybody drinking like that and not be super dehydrated. That's what alcohol does to you.
All right, Hank, thank you for the call. Live to Singapore, John Decker joins us now, Fox News Radio on KIDO Talk Radio. John, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Kevin?
I guess it's good evening there. We're okay. The flight over was okay, and now you're on the ground, and obviously with the president, you're always hitting the ground running. What's the latest, sir?
Well, the latest is that in less than 12 hours, the president will meet face-to-face with Kim Jong-un here in Singapore, and this is obviously a much-anticipated historic meeting which will take place. We got a briefing a few hours ago from Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He came to the Press Filing Center, gave a readout in terms of what they expect from this historic meeting and what America's goals are. The goal has not changed. The goal is the complete and verified denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula And what does North Korea get in return? They get security guarantees. That's all that the U.S. is committed to. But we don't know what the North Koreans want out of this historic summit, and I think that's sort of the big unknown heading into tomorrow.
Indeed. Of course, you've got the unusual fallout of the G7 summit, the war of words with Prime Minister Trudeau, and then the idea of bringing Russia back to the G8. But I guess the president is a master of compartmentalizing, and his comments over the weekend, John, where he said he's going to know within minutes if Un is ready to go, if he's legit.
Well, that's right. He has spoken about that. He's even tweeted about that. He said if things are not going well, he's prepared to walk away from this historic meeting. And I think that, that puts the president in a very strong position in terms of negotiating with Kim Jong-un. And so there are a lot of unknowns going in tomorrow. We don't know, obviously, the way this whole thing will turn out. You mentioned one possibility. That's, worst case scenario, the president walks away. Best case scenario, we get a commitment from Kim. The U.S. gets a commitment from Kim and also a commitment to verify, which would drastically change the way this region of the world views North Korea. And not only that, it would drastically change the way the world looks at North Korea. So, Kim, heading into tomorrow, it's a pivotal day for both the U.S. and North Korea, and also, obviously, for President Trump and Kim Jong-un.
John, obviously, you're working nonstop. Is there a chance to get a mood on the ground there about a possibility of, at the very least, getting an official declaration of the end of the Korean War?
Well, that's the possibility, and the president has spoken about that too, in the sense that, as you know, there's no been formal end to the Korean War. Technically, both North and South Korea are still at war with each other. That is something that could certainly get resolved. That would involve a lot of things, however. Let's face it, there are 40,000 plus U.S. troops that are based in South Korea. What becomes of them? There are also a significant contingent of U.S. troops at the DMZ. What becomes of them? So, I think that, this meeting is scheduled for tomorrow, but, because of all of the unknowns associated with it, I think it's the first of several meetings if this first meeting goes well.
John Decker, anything else that I might have missed asking you about, sir?
No, I think we covered all the bases. I think we'll have a better idea, when we have this conversation tomorrow, and also a better idea when we speak later in the week about what happened here in Singapore. But, as far as a preview, there's so many unknowns that it's so difficult to, go through every scenario that could possibly happen when President Trump meets with Kim Jong-un. For us, 12 hours from now here in Singapore.
John Decker, we appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kevin. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. John Decker, live from Singapore. Next, Tea Party Bob with Reaction. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And back to your phone calls. Let's go to Tea Party Bob, publisher of the Gem State Patriot. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you, Kevin?
Not bad. Always better at 9 than at 5, but I digress.
Well, I just have a few comments this morning. It's interesting that the members of the G7 are so upset with Trump leveling the playing field. As he said, they have been using us as a piggy bank for decades. No one has had a more one-sided deal than these guys have, and to make it worse, we have all of these multifaceted, basically one-sided agreements that they all seem to do very well with. He made an offer to eliminate all the tariffs and have real free trade, but you see that nobody actually took him up on it. This is what we should be doing. So we're going to listen to the moaning and groaning for a few weeks or months, and then they're all going to acquiesce and come to the bargaining table to fix the problem. Trump called their bluff when he talked to them about NATO, and they needed to prop it up, and it took several months before them to finally figure that out, and they've all put money up now. These countries are like drug addicts. They've been on the gravy train for so long, they don't know how to get off it. It's high time we pull the rug out from under them, and Trump's done just that. When you look at the GDP of the 6 trading partners we have combined and look at the U.S. GDP, we still have more than they do. They don't have a choice. They're going to have to come back to the table and negotiate these deals. And on the silly Hollywood front, why would anyone go to see another movie that Robert De Niro starred in? Now, maybe he should find another country to live in, along with the so-called stars that said they wanted to leave the country when Trump was elected. I say good riddance to bad rubbish.
Well, it really just shows you how out of touch folks on the in Hollywood and the left coasts are.
Well, they are out of touch, but they don't seem to want to get back in touch. And you know when it's going to show? When people stop going to see their movies and buying their records and listening to them pontificate about how bad Trump is. You know, I'm just waiting for Trump to be successful with these North Korean negotiations to show all of these so-called polished politicians and negotiators and naysayers how to really negotiate a deal. You know, it's so sad that the fake news are hoping for this summit to fail so that they can continue to trash the president. The left has they're continuing to sink to new lows. And I, for one, am going to be really happy when they have to eat crow. I'm proud of the fact that our president has taken the road less traveled, even if it's a bit bumpier. After all, you can't make an omelet unless you break some eggs, and I'm all for breaking a lot more eggs.
You're all about breaking eggs.
Yes, indeed I am. Would you like to come for breakfast?
A little late for breakfast after the program here there, buddy.
We'll have to make you an omelet for lunch, my friend.
Apparently. Of course, a lot of people like that brunch thing, but...
It's always a pleasure talking to you, Kevin. Thank you so much for your show.
Keep the pythons pumping, Tea Party Bob.
Yes, sir. You have a great day.
All right. You as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And don't forget your chance to win Kevin Miller's money this week, the last week of the great campaign. You can win up to $5,000. Think about that. You could get your car fixed. You could go for a trip. You could pay off credit cards. You could do the Dave Ramsey. Go to KIDOTalkRadio.com for details on how you can win up to $5,000. Traffic and weather together. Kevin Miller in the morning with a quick look at Canadian tariffs. We're hearing a lot, and what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago, some of the folks in Idaho went to Channel 7, or Channel 7 went to them, and they were going back and forth on, you know, the cost of goods and that what the president is doing is wrong. And did a little research here, and let's take a look at Canadian tariffs on American goods. Did you know that dairy in Canada, if we want to sell dairy, Idaho milk, Idaho cheese, to the folks in Canada, it's a 270% tariff. That's right, a 270% tariff. Sausage, 69.9%, another tariff. Barley seed, 57.8%. Ouch. Wheat, 49%. Bovine meat, 26.5%. Table linen, 18%. Wow. Amazing. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We had scheduled our friend, comedian Frank King with us. Frank, we're going to reschedule you. I think we got that email. Just send me when you're available earlier in the week. We appreciate that. We do want to talk about suicide and prevention, and not only Anthony Bourdain, but Kate Spade, but something that people in Idaho and other parts of the world suffer with and are challenged by. But we'll reschedule you. We're on right now, and just send me an email or send Ray an email when you're available. But we appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, man.
All right. Frank King joining us. We'll get back to him coming up hopefully earlier in the week. But again, back to it, the idea that it isn't fair. And quite frankly, we only have 2 minutes left in the hour, not a lot of time for Big Frank. But it is important that we continue to get this message out, and we do want to hear from you. So the president is not getting a fair shake from the press. And, George Bush took it. George Bush Sr. took it. Donald Trump doesn't. From allies and enemies and others. And it's amazing what you're hearing and seeing from folks. And if you didn't catch it over the weekend, Larry Kudlow, remember Larry Kudlow from CNBC and everything else? He went on CNN's State of the Union and had this to say concerning the free ride is over. And that's a big deal, because when you have all these tariffs, and Pat Buchanan and Kevin Miller, we've been talking about this for years. When you have all this restrictions on U.S. goods and they come in and pilfer our country, it's not fair, right? It is not free or fair trade. It's somebody finally is looking out for us, and that is President Trump along with you and me. Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.